The rain had started as a whisper against the hospital windows, but by the time Sienna Blake stepped into the parking garage, it had become a deluge. She pressed one hand protectively over the small swell of her belly, 22 weeks now, while fumbling with her umbrella in the other. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows between the rows of cars that made her pulse quicken with each step. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. A special thank you to everyone who has stayed with me so far. If you're hooked and ready to dive into this incredible story, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll have another story for you that's just as gripping as this one, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now, let's dive in. She shouldn't have stayed so late at the clinic. Dr. Reeves had needed help with the inventory, and Sienna never could say no. Not when she was still proving herself as the new nurse practitioner. Not when every paycheck mattered more than ever now. The extra hours meant extra money, and extra money meant a fighting chance at giving her baby a decent life. The parking garage was nearly empty at 11 p.m., her silver Honda Civic sitting alone in Section D like a beacon in the fluorescent dimness. Sienna's footsteps echoed against the concrete as she walked, her work bag heavy on her shoulder, pulling at muscles already sore from a 12-hour shift. She was mentally calculating her budget, diapers, crib, the security deposit for a bigger apartment, when she heard the screech of tires behind her. Sienna turned, her heart already racing, as a black SUV with tinted windows barreled around the corner. For a split second, she thought it might just speed past. Instead, it skidded to a halt directly beside her, so close she could feel the heat from its engine. The doors flew open with military precision. "Get in the car, Miss Castellano," a man's voice commanded. He was tall, dressed entirely in black, with a scar running down his left cheek that caught the fluorescent light. "I'm not," Sienna began, backing away, but there were already two more men behind her, blocking her escape. Her umbrella clattered to the ground. "We don't have time for games," another voice said, this one softer but somehow more threatening. "Mr. Cross doesn't like to be kept waiting." "You have the wrong person." Sienna's voice trembled as strong hands gripped her arms from both sides. "My name is Sienna Blake, not—" "Save it for the boss," Scarface interrupted. A black hood came down over her head, drowning her world in darkness and the smell of stale fabric. Sienna felt herself being lifted, carried, pushed into the vehicle. The door slammed shut with a finality that made her stomach drop. Her hands were bound, not roughly, but efficiently, with what felt like zip ties cutting into her wrists. The baby. Oh God, the baby. She tried to speak, to explain, to beg, but fear had stolen her voice and replaced it with the thundering of her own heartbeat. The SUV lurched forward, tires squealing against the garage floor, throwing her against the seat. "Check the photo again," someone muttered from the front seat. Silver Honda Civic, Section D, brown hair, 5'6". "It matches perfectly." But something's off about her face. The lighting's different in the garage. "It's her. Has to be." Boss said tonight, this location. Sienna's mind raced as fast as her heart. Miss Castellano. Mr. Cross. These names meant nothing to her. She was nobody, just a nurse practitioner who worked double shifts to save money, who ate ramen 3 times a week, whose only family was a mother in Oregon she called every Sunday. She didn't run in circles where people had bosses or got kidnapped from parking garages. This was a mistake. A terrible, catastrophic mistake. But as the vehicle sped through what she imagined were city streets, taking turn after turn until she'd lost all sense of direction, Sienna realized something even more terrifying. Would they believe her when they discovered their error? Or would she become a loose end that needed to be eliminated? She'd watched enough crime shows to know how these things worked. Her bound hands moved instinctively to her stomach, and that's when she felt it, the gentle flutter of movement. The baby, reassuring her of its presence. The baby, depending on her to survive this. Sienna had never felt more protective or more powerless in her entire life. The SUV began to slow after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. She heard gates opening, heavy, metal gates that groaned on their hinges. Then gravel crunching beneath the tires, the sound changing from asphalt to stone. They'd arrived somewhere remote, somewhere no one would hear her scream. "Bring her inside," a new voice commanded when the vehicle stopped. This voice was different, deeper, carrying an authority that made even her captors snap to attention. "Cross wants to see her immediately." Sienna was pulled from the SUV, still hooded, and marched across what felt like cobblestones slick with rain. Her scrubs were soaked through within seconds, the cold making her shiver. A door opened, and suddenly she was inside, the air warm and smelling of expensive cologne and wood smoke, scents so out of place with her terror that they almost made her laugh hysterically. "The girl, sir," someone announced. Footsteps approached, slow, measured, each one making Sienna's heart pound harder against her ribs. "Remove the hood," the authoritative voice commanded. It was closer now, directly in front of her. Light flooded Sienna's vision as the hood was yanked away. She blinked rapidly, trying to focus through tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. She was in an enormous room that looked like something from a movie, marble floors that reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, oil paintings in gilded frames, furniture that probably cost more than she made in a year. And standing before her, studying her with eyes the color of midnight, was the most dangerous-looking man she'd ever seen. He was tall, over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone by an artist who understood both beauty and cruelty. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and those eyes, calculating, intelligent, missing nothing as they swept over her. He wore an expensive black suit that fit him like it had been tailored to his body, and his presence dominated the room so completely that Sienna forgot about the half-dozen armed men standing in the shadows. This had to be Cross. Lucian Cross. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then his eyes narrowed, and something flickered across his face with confusion, followed by cold anger. "This isn't Isabella Castellano," he said quietly, his voice deadly calm. The room went silent except for the ticking of an antique clock somewhere behind her. "Sir, we followed the intel exactly," one of her captors began. Lucian Cross held up a hand, silencing him instantly. He took a step closer to Sienna, his eyes moving from her face down to where her bound hands rested protectively over her stomach. His gaze stopped there, and Sienna watched something change in his expression. "You're pregnant," he said. It wasn't a question. Sienna nodded, not trusting her voice. Cross's jaw tightened. He looked at his men with an expression that made them all take a step back. "You brought me the wrong woman. A pregnant woman." Each word was enunciated with terrifying precision. "Sir, we can fix this, we'll." "Leave us," Cross commanded, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than a shout. "All of you. Now." The men fled the room like water draining from a sink, leaving Sienna alone with the man who held her fate in his hands. Cross moved closer, and Sienna instinctively tried to back away, but her legs had turned to water. He reached out, not to hurt her, but to cut the zip ties from her wrists with a knife that appeared from nowhere. The blade was so sharp she barely felt it slice through the plastic. Sienna rubbed her wrists, red marks already forming, her eyes never leaving his face. There was something unsettling about how controlled he was, how every movement seemed calculated. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer now but still commanding. "Sienna. Sienna Blake." The words came out barely above a whisper. "And you're not connected to the Castellano family in any way?" "I don't even know who they are." Sienna's voice grew stronger, fed by desperation. "I'm a nurse practitioner. I work at the Mercy Street Clinic. I treat kids with asthma and elderly patients with diabetes. This is a mistake, a terrible mistake. Please, I have a baby." Her voice broke, and she hated herself for the weakness. Cross studied her face with an intensity that made her feel transparent, like he could see every truth and lie she'd ever told. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped back and gestured to a leather chair behind her. "Sit down, Sienna Blake. Before you fall down." Sienna's legs gave out, and she sank into the chair. It was buttersoft and probably cost more than her car. She watched as Cross poured something amber from a crystal decanter, then seemed to think better of it. He poured water instead and handed it to her. "Drink," he ordered, though his tone had lost its sharp edge. Sienna's hands shook as she took the glass. The water was cold and clean, and it helped clear the fog of terror from her mind. As she drank, she studied him more carefully. Lucian Cross was younger than she'd initially thought, maybe 35, though his eyes held the weariness of someone much older. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow, barely visible, and another along his jawline. His hands, she noticed, were scarred across the knuckles. These weren't the soft hands of a businessman. These were the hands of someone who'd fought for everything he had. 22 weeks, he asked, nodding toward her stomach. Sienna blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "I have experience with these things." Something painful flashed across his face, gone so quickly Sienna wondered if she'd imagined it. He ran a hand through his dark hair, disturbing its perfect arrangement. "This complicates everything." "Please," Sienna said, setting down the glass with trembling hands. "Just let me go. I won't tell anyone about this. I don't even know where I am. I just want to go home and forget this nightmare ever happened. I won't go to the police. I promise." Cross's laugh was bitter and entirely humorless. If only it were that simple, Sienna Blake. He walked to the massive window, rain streaming down the glass like tears. "You've seen my face. You're in my home. You know my name. And even if I believed you'd keep silent, which, for the record, I don't, there are other people who will want to know how this mistake happened. People who won't be as considerate as I am." Sienna felt ice crystallize in her veins. "What are you saying?" He turned back to her, and in his eyes, she saw something that terrified her more than anything else that night, not cruelty, but cold calculation. "I'm saying that for now, you're not going anywhere. At least not until I figure out what to do with you. You can't just keep me here." Sienna stood, though her legs still felt unsteady. "I have a job. People will look for me. My mother calls me every Sunday." "It's Tuesday," Cross interrupted. "That gives us 5 days." The casual way he said it made Sienna's stomach turn. Before she could respond, before she could beg or scream or cry, Cross's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted. His face went pale, then flushed with an emotion Sienna couldn't name. "When?" he demanded into the phone. A pause. His jaw clenched. Are you certain? Another pause, longer this time. His knuckles turned white around the phone. Send me everything. Now. He ended the call and stood frozen, staring at the device in his hand like it had betrayed him. When his eyes finally refocused on Sienna, there was something new in them, something that made absolutely no sense given the circumstances. Recognition. And something that looked almost like fear. The baby, he said slowly, as if each word cost him something. How far along did you say? 22 weeks, Sienna repeated, confused and frightened by the sudden shift. Why does that matter to you? And the father? Cross's voice was suddenly urgent, almost desperate. Where is he? Sienna's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, a protective gesture she developed over the past months. There is no father. Not anymore. The old pain tried to surface, but she pushed it down. She'd cried enough tears over Marcus. He left when he found out. Said he wasn't ready to be a parent, that he had complications in his life. She lifted her chin defiantly, even as her eyes burned. I don't need him. We'll be fine on our own. Cross moved so quickly Sienna didn't have time to flinch. He crossed the room and knelt before her chair, bringing himself to eye level. This close, she could see flecks of silver in his midnight eyes, could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that made her head spin. What was his name? Cross asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why does that matter? His name, Sienna. There was something almost pleading in his tone now. Something in his voice, in his eyes, made her answer. Marcus. He said his name was Marcus Thorne. But I haven't seen him in 4 months. He disappeared right after I told him about the baby. She paused, a horrible thought occurring to her. Oh God, is he involved in this? Is that why your men took me? Did he? No, Cross said, but he wasn't looking at her face anymore. He was staring at her stomach with an expression of pure disbelief. Marcus Thorne isn't real. That's not even a good alias. The room tilted. What are you talking about? Cross stood abruptly and walked away, his hand running through his hair, once, twice, 3 times, completely destroying its careful styling. He looked like a man watching his entire world reorganize itself into something unrecognizable. Where did you meet him? Cross asked, his back still to her. Portland. A hotel bar. Why? The Riverside Hotel, Cross interrupted, turning to face her. 22 weeks ago. There was a medical conference. Sienna's mouth went dry. How could you possibly know that? Part 3, The Inciting Incident. Cross pulled out his phone, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. He held it up, showing her a photograph. Is this him? You're Marcus Thorne? Sienna's breath caught in her throat. The photo showed a man with sandy blonde hair and green eyes, a casual smile on his face. It was him. It was Marcus. Yes, she whispered. That's him. But how do you have his picture? Cross's laugh was hollow. Because that's me, Sienna. That's a photo from 22 weeks ago. The hair was a wig. The eyes were contacts. He set the phone down and looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. I was trying to be someone else for one night. Someone normal. Someone who didn't have blood on his hands. The room began to spin. Sienna gripped the arms of the chair, her knuckles white. No. No, that's not possible. You look nothing like. Appearance can be changed easily when you have the right resources, Cross interrupted. He moved to a drawer in an ornate desk and pulled out a file. Inside were photographs, images of himself with different hair colors, different styles, even different facial hair. In one, he looked exactly like Marcus. I've spent my entire adult life learning how to become invisible when necessary. That night in Portland, I needed to disappear. There was a contract out on me. Staying in my own skin would have been suicide. Sienna's mind raced back to that night. The conference had been exhausting, and she'd gone to the hotel bar to decompress. Marcus, no, this man, had been sitting alone, looking as tired as she felt. They'd started talking about nothing important. Medicine. Travel. Bad coffee. He'd made her laugh. Really laugh, for the first time in months. One drink had turned into 3. 3 had turned into going back to his room. She'd told herself it was just one night. A moment of freedom before her life became consumed with student loans and double shifts. She'd never done anything like that before. Never expected to see him again. Never expected this. You're lying, Sienna said, but her voice lacked conviction. This is some kind of trick. Cross moved closer, and this time Sienna saw something in his face she recognized, the same intensity Marcus had when he'd looked at her that night. The same way his jaw tightened when he was thinking. The same habit of running his hand through his hair when he was uncertain. Oh God. It was him. You told me you were applying to teach at a nursing school, Cross said quietly. You said you wanted to help train the next generation of healthcare workers. You talked about your mother in Oregon, how she'd raised you alone after your father died. You said you were afraid of becoming your mother, strong but lonely. Tears began streaming down Sienna's face. Only Marcus knew those things. Only Marcus had held her that night when she'd opened up about fears she'd never shared with anyone. You told me about your brother, Sienna whispered. You said his name was, she stopped, seeing Cross's expression change. You said his name was David. That he died when you were 19. That you blamed yourself. Cross's jaw clenched. His real name was Julian. But yes. He died. And yes, I blame myself every single day. He looked away, and for a moment, the dangerous mafia boss disappeared, replaced by a man carrying unbearable grief. I don't understand, Sienna said, wiping her eyes. Why the disguise? Why lie to me? Because that's what I do. I lie. I manipulate. I destroy. Cross's voice was bitter. That night, I wanted to be anyone but Lucian Cross. I wanted to be Marcus Thorne, a corporate security consultant with a boring job and a normal life. I wanted to sit in a bar and talk to a beautiful woman without wondering if she was sent to kill me. And afterwards? Sienna's voice broke. When I gave you my number? When I thought she couldn't finish. The memory was too painful. I left before dawn, Cross said. I had to. There were men coming for me, and anyone associated with me would become a target. Leaving you was the safest thing I could do. He paused. I didn't know about the baby. Would it have mattered? The question came out sharper than Sienna intended. Cross met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw him completely unguarded. Yes. It would have changed everything. Before Sienna could respond, a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the house. Cross immediately pulled a gun from beneath his jacket, his entire demeanor shifting back to the dangerous man who'd interrogated her minutes ago. Stay here, he commanded, moving toward the door. "What's happening?" Sienna asked, fear spiking through her. Cross looked back at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. "They found us. The people who wanted Isabella Castellano." He checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. "And now they know I have you instead." Another crash, closer this time. Shouting. The unmistakable sound of gunfire. Cross cursed under his breath. He strode back to Sienna and pulled her to her feet. "Listen to me very carefully. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, you stay behind me. You don't run. You don't scream. You do exactly what I tell you. Understand?" Sienna nodded, her hand instinctively moving to protect her stomach. Their baby. His baby. The door to the room burst open, and Cross's gun was up in an instant. But it was only Vincent, one of his men, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "Sir, we have a breach. South entrance. At least 8 hostiles, maybe more." Vincent's eyes flicked to Sienna. "They're asking for the Castellano girl." "How did they find us so quickly?" Cross demanded. "Someone talked. We have a leak." Cross's expression darkened. He looked at Sienna, and she saw him making rapid calculations. "Get her to the safe room. North wing. Code is 4-7-9-2. Don't come out until you hear from me directly. Sir, with respect, you should be the one." "That's an order, Vincent." Cross's voice left no room for argument. "Protect her. Protect them both. That's your only priority." Vincent's eyes widened slightly at the word both, but he nodded. "Yes, sir." More gunfire, now from multiple directions. The attack was coordinated. Have you ever discovered a truth that changed everything you thought you knew? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Cross looked at Sienna one last time, something unreadable in his midnight eyes. Then he was gone, disappearing into the chaos with his weapon raised. Vincent grabbed Sienna's arm. "We need to move. Now." Vincent pulled Sienna through a maze of hallways, his grip firm but not painful. The gunfire behind them grew louder, punctuated by shouts and the sound of shattering glass. Sienna's heart hammered against her ribs as she struggled to keep pace, one hand pressed protectively over her belly. "This way," Vincent urged, guiding her around the corner. The safe room was hidden behind what appeared to be a solid mahogany wall. He pressed a section of the wood paneling, and it swung inward, revealing a steel door with a keypad. He punched in the code, 4-7-9-2, and the door hissed open. The room beyond was surprisingly spacious, lined with monitors showing various angles of the property. Sienna could see the chaos unfolding outside, armed men in tactical gear storming through the grounds, Cross's security team fighting back with trained precision. "Stay here," Vincent said, ushering her inside. "Don't open this door for anyone but Mr. Cross or myself. Anyone else, you stay silent. This room is soundproof and reinforced. They won't find you." "Wait," Sienna grabbed his arm. "What about Lucian? Cross, I mean. What if?" "The boss can handle himself," Vincent said, but there was worry in his eyes. "He's survived worse than this." He paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you. Whatever's between you two, it matters to him." Before Sienna could respond, Vincent was gone, the door sealing shut with a definitive click. Sienna stood frozen in the middle of the safe room, her breath coming in short gasps. The monitors flickered with scenes of violence, men fighting, falling, bleeding. She searched the screens frantically until she found him. Cross moved through the chaos like a force of nature. He was precise, controlled, deadly. Two men came at him from opposite directions, and he took them both down within seconds. There was no hesitation in his movements, no mercy. This was the real Lucian Cross, not the man who'd held her in Portland, but the mafia boss who'd built an empire on fear and power. Yet when he paused to check on one of his fallen men, when he pulled the injured guard to safety before continuing the fight, Sienna saw something else. Honor, perhaps. Or loyalty. The kind that couldn't be faked. She sank into the chair in front of the monitors, her legs finally giving out completely. Her mind was still reeling from the revelations of the past hour. Marcus was Lucian. The gentleman who'd made her laugh was the same dangerous criminal who now fought for his life, and hers, outside these walls. And the baby. Their baby. Sienna's hand moved to her stomach, feeling the small bump that had become her constant companion. She'd spent 4 months preparing to do this alone, convincing herself she didn't need anyone. But now? Now everything was different. The baby kicked, as if responding to her thoughts. It was stronger now than the gentle flutters she'd felt earlier. More insistent. I know, she whispered to her stomach. I know this is crazy. Trust me, I'm as confused as you are. On the monitors, the tide of battle seemed to be turning. Cross's men were pushing the attackers back, though the cost was evident in the bodies littering the grounds. Sienna forced herself to watch, to bear witness to the violence that came with Lucian's world. This was her baby's father. This was the life she'd stumbled into. A new figure appeared on one of the screens, a woman with striking red hair, moving with the same deadly grace as Cross. She fought alongside his men, taking down attackers with brutal efficiency. When she reached Cross's position, they exchanged words Sienna couldn't hear, then moved together to flank a group of hostiles. Jealousy flared unexpectedly in Sienna's chest. Who was this woman? Someone from his world, clearly. Someone who belonged here in a way Sienna never could. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Gradually, the attackers retreated, leaving behind their dead and wounded. Cross's men secured the perimeter while their boss checked each fallen team member personally. Sienna watched him kneel beside a young man who couldn't have been more than 25. Cross's hand rested on the man's shoulder as he spoke, words of comfort, perhaps, or apology. When he stood, his shoulders were tight with tension and grief. The red-haired woman approached him again, placing a hand on his arm. They spoke intently, and Sienna wished desperately that she could hear their conversation. Cross shook his head at something the woman said, then gestured toward the house, toward where Sienna was hidden. Her heart began to race again. Footsteps approached the safe room. Sienna held her breath, remembering Vincent's warning. Don't open for anyone else. Sienna. Cross's voice came through an intercom she hadn't noticed. It's me. I'm coming in. The keypad beeped, and the door opened. Cross stepped inside, and Sienna gasped. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt torn and stained with blood, whether his or someone else's, she couldn't tell. There was a cut above his eyebrow, and his knuckles were split and bleeding. But he was alive. Are you hurt? He asked immediately, his eyes scanning her for injuries. No, I'm fine. But you, Sienna stood, instinctively moving toward him before stopping herself. What was she doing? This man had kidnapped her. Lied to her. He was a criminal. He was also the father of her child. Cross noticed her hesitation and stayed where he was. The immediate threat is contained. But they'll be back, probably with more men. We have maybe a few hours. He ran his hand through his hair, that familiar gesture that now belonged to both Marcus and Lucian. I need to get you somewhere safe. Safe? Sienna's laugh was slightly hysterical. I was safe before your men grabbed me from a parking garage. I was safe working at my clinic, living my boring life. You were never safe, Cross interrupted, his voice quiet but intense. From the moment I left that hotel room in Portland, you carried something of mine. And in my world, that makes you a target whether you knew it or not. The words hung in the air between them. Who was that woman? Sienna asked, hating how the question revealed her jealousy. The redhead fighting with you? Something flickered in Cross's expression, surprise, perhaps, or amusement. That's Natasha. My second in command. She's been with my organization for 6 years. He paused. She's also engaged to Vincent. Sienna felt heat rise to her cheeks. Oh. Sienna. Cross took a step closer. We need to talk about what happens next. About the baby. About us. There is no us, Sienna said, but the words lacked conviction. There was one night 4 months ago between 2 different people. Was it? Cross asked softly. Because the woman I spent that night with, she's standing in front of me right now. And the man who held you, who told you things I've never told anyone else. He's still here too, underneath all of this. He gestured to his blood-stained clothes, to the monitors showing the aftermath of violence. Before Sienna could respond, Natasha appeared in the doorway, her expression grave. Boss, we need you. Now. We've identified who sent them. Cross's jaw tightened. Can it wait? No. Natasha's green eyes flicked to Sienna, then back to Cross. It's about her. About why they really came. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cross turned to Sienna, something dark and dangerous crossing his face. Stay here. I mean it. Don't leave this room. He followed Natasha out, and Sienna was left alone again with the monitors and her spiraling thoughts. She moved closer to the screens, watching as Cross and his inner circle gathered in what looked like a war room. Natasha was speaking rapidly, showing them something on a tablet. Whatever it was made every person in that room go rigid with tension. Cross's fist slammed down on the table hard enough that Sienna could see papers scatter. He was furious, no, beyond furious. He was terrified. Minutes crawled by. Sienna paced the safe room, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. Finally, the door opened again. Cross entered, followed by Natasha and Vincent. The 3 of them looked like they were preparing for war. Sit down, Cross said to Sienna, his voice carefully controlled. I don't want to sit down. I want to know what's happening. Sienna. Please. There was something in his tone that made her comply. Cross pulled up a chair and sat across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. The men who attacked tonight, they weren't sent by the Castellanos. That was a cover story. They were sent by someone else. Someone from my past. I don't understand. Natasha stepped forward, holding out a tablet. Do you recognize this man? The photo showed a distinguished-looking man in his 60s with silver hair and cold blue eyes. Sienna shook her head. No. Should I? His name is Richard Moretti, Cross said, his voice tight. He runs the largest crime syndicate on the East Coast. 5 years ago, I worked for him. Until I discovered he was trafficking children. Cross's hands clenched into fists. I couldn't let it continue. So I destroyed his operation from the inside, took evidence to the FBI, and watched his empire burn. He went to prison. His daughter, Cross's voice cracked slightly. His daughter was killed in the crossfire. Caught in an explosion meant for me. Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. Moretti swore revenge. Not just my death, but my suffering. He wanted me to lose everything I cared about before I died. Cross looked at her with haunted eyes. He got out of prison 3 weeks ago. Since then, he's been hunting for any weakness, any leverage against me. Vincent picked up the explanation. We've had intelligence suggesting he was targeting the Castellano family, trying to force an alliance. Isabella Castellano was supposed to be kidnapped tonight, by us, as a bargaining chip in negotiations. But someone fed Moretti false information. They told him about Portland, Natasha said quietly. About the woman Cross spent the night with. About the pregnancy. Sienna's blood turned to ice. But how? How could anyone know? Because I made a mistake, Cross said, self-loathing heavy in his voice. 3 weeks ago, when Moretti was released, I had my people track down every contact I'd made during that weekend in Portland. I wanted to ensure no one I'd encountered was in danger. I had someone check on you. He looked at her with agony in his eyes. That inquiry was flagged. Moretti has people everywhere, police, hospitals, government offices. When my man confirmed you were pregnant and ran the timeline, Moretti put it together. So the kidnapping tonight? Was Moretti's men trying to take you? They knew exactly where to find you because they'd been watching you for days. The Castellano cover story was just to confuse my own security. Cross stood abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. My men grabbing you first was accidental, but it probably saved your life. If Moretti had gotten to you. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Sienna felt like she was drowning. So what now? You said they'll come back. They will, Natasha confirmed. Moretti wants that baby, Sienna. He sees it as the perfect revenge, taking Cross's child, raising it in his world, using it against him for the rest of his life. Or, she hesitated. Or killing it, Cross finished, his voice hollow. Killing both of you, making me watch, then killing me. That's what he promised. That's what he'll do if he gets the chance. Sienna's vision swam. She pressed both hands to her stomach, feeling the baby move beneath her palms. This can't be happening. This can't be real. Cross knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. His touch was gentle despite the violence he was capable of. Sienna, look at me. Look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I will not let him touch you. I will not let him touch our child. Do you understand? I will burn down the entire East Coast if that's what it takes to keep you both safe. How? Sienna's voice broke. How can you protect us from someone like that? You said yourself he has people everywhere. Which is why you can't go home. You can't go back to your life. Cross's grip tightened on her hands. I know what I'm asking. I know how insane this sounds. But you need to disappear, Sienna. Completely. New identity, new location, 24-hour protection until Moretti is dead or back in prison. For how long? The silence that followed was answer enough. Forever, Sienna whispered. You're asking me to give up my entire life forever. Cross's expression was anguished. I'm asking you to stay alive. You and our baby. That's all that matters. Sienna pulled her hands away and stood, needing distance. Her mind raced through everything she'd built, her career, her small apartment, her friends, her mother. All of it would have to be abandoned because of one night, one choice, one man. I need time to think, she said. We don't have time, Vincent interjected. Moretti's people could regroup within hours. We need to move you now. Then give me 5 minutes. Sienna's voice rose with panic and fury. 5 minutes to process that my entire life just ended. The room fell silent. Cross motioned for Natasha and Vincent to leave. They hesitated, but ultimately obeyed, closing the door behind them. Cross and Sienna stood on opposite sides of the safe room, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them both. I'm sorry, Cross said finally. I'm sorry for Portland, for lying to you, for bringing this nightmare into your life. If I could go back. But you can't, Sienna interrupted. None of us can. There's something else, Cross said, his voice heavy with dread. Something you need to know before you make any decisions. Sienna turned to face him, exhaustion and fear warring in her chest. What else could there possibly be? Cross pulled out his phone and showed her a video. The timestamp indicated it was recorded 2 hours ago. A man sat bound to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Even through the poor quality footage, Sienna could see he'd been beaten severely. This is Marco Castellano, Isabella's brother, Cross explained. Moretti's men sent this 30 minutes ago. The video played. A figure stepped into frame, Richard Moretti himself, looking exactly like his photo but somehow more menacing in motion. His voice was cultured, almost gentle, which made his words even more chilling. Lucian Cross. By now you've realized your mistake. You have the wrong woman, a pregnant nurse instead of my future daughter-in-law. But here's what you don't know, I wanted you to take the wrong woman. I've been planning this for 3 years, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy you. Moretti walked slowly around the bound man. You see, I know about Portland. I know about the baby. And I know something else, something delicious. He leaned close to the camera. That child isn't just yours, Lucian. There's a reason you felt compelled to wear a disguise that night, to hide in Portland. You were running from me, but you were also running from yourself. Sienna's blood ran cold. What is he talking about? Cross's face had gone pale. Keep watching. Moretti continued. Your mother, Lucian, before she died, she told me a secret. She told me about the genetic condition that runs in your family. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The same condition that killed your brother Julian at 19. The same condition you carry. He smiled, cruel and satisfied. 50% chance you've passed it to your child. 50% chance that baby dies before adulthood, just like Julian did. The video ended. Sienna felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. Is that true? Is what he said true? Cross couldn't meet her eyes. Yes. I carry the gene. I've known since Julian died. It's why I never planned to have children. Why I've always been so careful, he stopped. Except for Portland. That night, I was someone else. I forgot to be careful because I wanted, just once, to be normal. You didn't tell me. Sienna's voice was barely a whisper. When you realized about the baby, you didn't tell me our child might have a death sentence. I only confirmed it an hour ago, When I got my genetic records. I was going to tell you, I swear. When? Siena's voice rose. When were you going to tell me? After you locked me away in some safe house? After the baby was born? Tears streamed down her face. I have a right to know. This is my child. Our child, Cross said desperately. Sienna, please. Don't. She held up a hand, backing away from him. Don't call it our child when you've been keeping secrets that could affect its entire life. How many other things haven't you told me? How many other lies? Before Cross could answer, an explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered, and alarms began to wail. On the monitors, Sienna could see fire blooming on the east side of the estate. Cross was instantly in combat mode, gun drawn, moving to the door. They're back. Earlier than expected. He grabbed a radio. Vincent, status report. Static, then Vincent's voice crackling through. South and east perimeters breached. At least 20 hostiles, maybe more. Boss, they've got RPGs. We can't hold them. Another explosion, closer this time. The safe room shuddered. Cross turned to Sienna, his face a mask of determination and fear. There's an escape tunnel. It leads to a garage a quarter-mile from here. Cars are waiting, fully fueled, untraceable. He pressed a key into her hand. Take the black sedan. Drive to the address programmed in the GPS. There are people there who will protect you. What about you? I'll buy you time. Cross moved to a panel in the wall, revealing an arsenal of weapons. He began loading magazines with practiced efficiency. Moretti wants me. If I'm here, fighting, he'll focus on me. You'll have a chance to escape. You'll die, Sienna said, the realization crushing her chest. If you stay, you'll die. Cross looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw acceptance. Then I die. But you and the baby live. That's all that matters. No. Sienna grabbed his arm. No, that's not, we need to go together. Both of us. If we both run, he'll chase us forever. This ends tonight, one way or another. Cross cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away her tears. I've done terrible things in my life, Sienna. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, built an empire on blood and fear. But this, through protecting you, protecting our child, this is the one good thing I can do. Let me do this. Gunfire erupted somewhere above them. Shouting. More explosions. Please, Sienna begged. Please don't make me lose you. I just found you. Her voice broke. What about the baby? Don't you want to meet your child? Something crumbled in Cross's expression. For a moment, Sienna saw the man from Portland, vulnerable, human, yearning for connection. Then the Mafia boss returned, hardened by necessity. More than anything, he whispered. But wanting isn't enough. I can't protect you both if I'm with you. Moretti has too many resources, too many men. But if I eliminate him tonight, he stopped, shaking his head. The tunnel. Now. That's an order. I'm not one of your soldiers. No, Cross agreed, his voice softening. You're the mother of my child. You're the only woman who's ever made me want to be better than what I am. Which is exactly why you need to go. He opened the panel revealing the tunnel, a dark passage stretching into uncertainty. From above, the sounds of battle intensified. Cross kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it shattered something in Sienna's heart. If I survive this, I'll find you. I swear it. But if I don't, he pressed something into her hand. A flash drive. Everything you need is on here. Bank accounts, contacts, proof of paternity. Our child will never want for anything. Except a father, Sienna said through her tears. Better no father than a dead one being used as leverage. Cross guided her toward the tunnel entrance. Go. Now. Before I lose my nerve. Sienna stood at the tunnel entrance, torn between survival and something she couldn't quite name. Behind her, Cross was already moving back toward the armory, preparing for what might be his final stand. Above them, the battle raged, explosions, gunfire, the smell of smoke filtering even into the safe room. She looked down at the flash drive in her hand, then at her stomach where their child grew. A child who might carry a genetic time bomb. A child who would never know its father if she ran now. No, Sienna said quietly. Cross turned, confusion crossing his face. What? No, she repeated, louder this time. She stepped away from the tunnel entrance. I'm not running. Not like this. Sienna, we don't have time for. You said Moretti wants revenge. That he wants to make you suffer. Sienna's mind raced, pieces clicking together. So give him what he wants. Or make him think you're giving him what he wants. Cross stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You want me to surrender? I want you to negotiate. Offer him a trade, you for my safe passage. Make him think you're broken, that losing us destroyed you. That's insane. He'll kill me the moment. Not if he thinks there's more to gain by keeping you alive, Sienna pressed. He doesn't just want you dead, he wants you destroyed, humiliated, suffering. Killing you too quickly robs him of that satisfaction. Cross was shaking his head, but Sienna could see him processing the strategy. Even if that worked. Moretti made a mistake. He revealed he's been planning this for 3 years. That means he's obsessed, which means he's not thinking clearly. Obsession makes people sloppy. Another explosion rocked the building. Dust rained from the ceiling. We have maybe 5 minutes before they breach this level, Cross said. I am not raising this baby alone, wondering every day if it inherited a death sentence, knowing I could have done something but I ran instead. She grabbed his arm. You said you wanted to be better. This is how. Not by dying for us, but by living for us. By outsmarting Moretti one more time. Cross looked at her with an expression caught between admiration and despair. She placed his hand on her stomach. This baby deserves parents who fight for each other. The baby kicked against his palm. Cross's radio crackled. Boss, they're on the main level. We can't hold them much longer. Cross closed his eyes, making his choice. When he opened them, there was new determination. Vincent, fall back to position Delta. Natasha, cease fire. Everyone stand down. Sir? Vincent's voice was confused through the static. I said stand down. I'm ending this. Cross looked at Sienna. But we do this my way. You stay here until I signal it's clear. If anything goes wrong, you take that tunnel and run. Promise me. Sienna hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Cross pulled her close, kissing her with an intensity that spoke of all the words they hadn't said. When he pulled back, he was transformed, the lethal, calculating crime boss who had survived decades in a world of violence. Stay out of sight. Don't make a sound. He moved to the door, then paused. Sienna? That night in Portland, It wasn't a lie. The man you met was real. He's the part of me I thought I'd lost forever. You brought him back. Then he was gone. Sienna sank into the chair, her heart pounding. On the monitors, she watched Cross walk through the burning mansion, hands raised in surrender. His men had fallen back, creating a corridor for Moretti's forces. Moretti appeared on screen, surrounded by armed guards, his smile triumphant. Cross and Moretti met in the grand foyer. They spoke, words Sienna couldn't hear. Cross's posture was defeated, broken. He gestured toward where Sienna was hidden. Moretti's expression grew hungry. Cross pulled out his phone slowly, typed something, then showed the screen to Moretti. On Sienna's monitors, a new message appeared. When I give the signal, run to the tunnel. Natasha will meet you. On screen, Moretti laughed. He made a gesture, and his men grabbed Cross roughly, forcing him to his knees. Sienna's hand flew to her mouth. This wasn't supposed to happen. But Cross didn't resist. He knelt there, head bowed, the picture of defeat. Moretti circled him like a predator. Then Cross looked directly at the camera, directly at Sienna, and smiled. It wasn't defeat. It was triumph. That was when Sienna noticed. Cross's men hadn't retreated. They'd repositioned. On every monitor, she could see them, in shadows, behind pillars, on balconies, surrounding Moretti's forces. Cross had herded them exactly where he wanted them. The signal came in the form of a single word, now. The mansion erupted in coordinated chaos. Cross disarmed the guard nearest him, using the man's weapon against Moretti's forces. But something went wrong. Moretti pulled out a detonator. Everyone stop, his voice boomed. Or I blow this entire building with all of us in it. The fighting ceased. Cross froze. Did you really think I wouldn't have a contingency plan? Moretti's laugh was chilling. I've rigged this entire estate with explosives. You kill me, we all die. Including your precious girl in that safe room. So here's what's going to happen, Moretti continued. You're going to watch while my men bring her out. Then you're going to watch while I take everything you care about. And only then will I let this building bury us all. On the monitors, Sienna watched Cross's face and saw resignation. He was going to surrender to save her from the explosives. But Sienna had already made her choice. She stood, unlocked the safe room door, and stepped into the hallway. What would you sacrifice for the person you love? Tell us in the comments below. Sienna walked into the grand foyer, her hands raised, her heart thundering in her chest. Every eye turned to her, Cross's men, Moretti's soldiers, and finally, the two men at the center of it all. Don't shoot, she called out, her voice surprisingly steady. I'm unarmed. I'm coming out voluntarily. Sienna, no. Cross's anguish was raw, unguarded. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucian Cross looked truly afraid. Moretti's laugh echoed through the destroyed foyer. How touching. The little bird flies into the cage of her own accord. He gestured, and two of his men moved toward her. Bring her here. They grabbed her arms, not gently, and dragged her to where Moretti stood. Up close, he was even more menacing. Those cold blue eyes studied her like a specimen, lingering on her pregnant belly with predatory interest. So you're the woman who caught the uncatchable Lucian Cross, Moretti mused. I must admit, I expected someone more impressive. Let her go, Cross said, his voice deadly quiet. You have me. That was always what you wanted. Let her walk out of here, and I'll give you anything. Do anything. just let her live. Oh, Lucian. Moretti's smile was cruel. You still don't understand. I don't want your cooperation. I want your destruction. He grabbed Sienna's chin, forcing her to look at him. This baby, this beautiful, doomed baby, is the perfect instrument for that. Sienna jerked her face away. You're not touching my child. Such spirit, Moretti said, amused. I can see why he broke his rules for you. He pulled out his phone, showing a video feed. But spirit won't save you from what comes next. The screen showed a hospital, Mercy Street Clinic. Sienna realized with growing horror. The camera panned to show Dr. Reeves and the night staff, all bound and held at gunpoint. My insurance policy, Moretti explained. In case Cross here tried anything clever. Which, of course, he did. He looked at Cross with mock disappointment. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate your little ambush? I've been studying you for 3 years, Lucian. I know how you think. Cross's expression was granite, but Sienna saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. His men were still positioned around the room, but none dared move with the detonator in Moretti's hand and hostages on the screen. So here's what's going to happen, Moretti continued. My men and I are going to walk out of here with this lovely woman. You and your people will stay here, with enough explosives beneath you to create a very impressive crater. In exactly 1 hour, if I haven't called with the disarm code, this building becomes rubble. And if you get what you want? Cross asked. Then maybe, I'll let your people live. Moretti shrugged. As for you and the girl? Well, that depends on how entertaining you are. His smile turned vicious. I'm thinking of raising that baby myself. Teaching it to hate its father. Wouldn't that be poetic? Sienna felt rage burn through her fear. This man thought he could take her child, use it as a weapon, twist it into something dark. Over her dead body. Which, she realized, might be exactly what it took. You know what I think? Sienna said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. I think you're a coward. Everyone froze. Moretti's eyes narrowed dangerously. Excuse me? You heard me. Sienna forced herself to meet his gaze. You hide behind hostages and explosives because you know you can't actually beat Cross in a fair fight. You talk about revenge, but all I see is a bitter old man who's afraid. Sienna, stop, Cross warned, but she ignored him. Your daughter died in the crossfire? Sienna continued, her voice gaining strength. That's tragic. But Cross wasn't the one who put her in danger, you were. You're the one who built an empire on trafficking children. You're the one who made enemies. And when it all came crashing down, you blamed everyone but yourself. Moretti's face had gone purple with rage. You dare. I dare because I have nothing to lose, Sienna interrupted. You're going to kill us anyway. But before you do, I want you to know something. That baby you want to use as revenge? It's already loved more than you ever loved your daughter. Because real love means protecting people, not putting them in harm's way. Real love means sacrifice. She turned to Cross, and in his eyes, she saw understanding dawn. Cross made mistakes, Sienna said, her voice softening. But he's trying to be better. He's trying to protect his child, even if it means dying. What are you doing? Playing games? Proving how powerful you are? She looked back at Moretti with contempt. You're pathetic. The slap came so fast Sienna didn't see it coming. Her head snapped to the side, her cheek exploding in pain. She tasted blood. Cross roared and lunged forward, but Moretti's men had him in an instant, guns pressed to his head. "You want sacrifice?" Moretti hissed at Sienna. "I'll show you sacrifice." He pressed the detonator button. Nothing happened. Moretti pressed it again. And again. Still nothing. "Looking for this?" Natasha's voice came from behind him. She held up a small device, the actual detonator trigger. "We switched them 10 minutes ago. While you were so busy gloating, my team disarmed your explosives." Moretti spun, confusion and rage warring on his face. "That's impossible." "You studied Cross for 3 years, Natasha said, smiling coldly. "But you forgot he's been building this organization for 15. We have people everywhere too. Including in your crew." One of Moretti's own men, the one who'd been standing closest to him, suddenly had a gun pointed at Moretti's head. "Sorry, boss. Better offer." Everything happened at once. Cross broke free from the distracted guards, disarming them with brutal efficiency. His men opened fire on Moretti's forces. But instead of a bloodbath, it was over in seconds. Moretti's crew, outnumbered and betrayed from within, surrendered almost immediately. Moretti himself tried to run, but Cross caught him, slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. "My daughter," Cross said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "You're going to call your people at the clinic. You're going to tell them to release the hostages unharmed. Then you're going to prison for the rest of your miserable life." Moretti laughed, even with Cross's hand around his throat. "You think prison can hold me? I got out once." "Not from where you're going," Cross interrupted. He pulled out his phone. "Vincent, send the files." "What files?" Moretti asked, but fear had entered his voice. "Every transaction. Every contact. Every crime you've committed since you got out of prison." Cross's smile was terrifying. "You see, I've been studying you too. And I'm very thorough." Moretti's face went pale as sirens wailed in the distance. 3 months later, the morning sun filtered through white curtains in a modest house overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Sienna sat in a rocking chair by the window, one hand resting on her now prominent belly, the other holding a cup of herbal tea that had long since gone cold. The view was breathtaking, endless blue water meeting cloudless sky, but it was the man in the kitchen that held her attention. Lucian Cross, former Mafia boss, current government witness, and soon-to-be father, was attempting to make pancakes. He was failing spectacularly. "I think you're supposed to flip them before they turn black," Sienna called out, unable to suppress her smile. Cross looked up, spatula in hand, looking more frustrated than she'd ever seen him face down armed enemies. "Cooking is harder than it looks." "Most things are." Sienna set down her tea and joined him in the kitchen. Together, they salvaged what they could of breakfast, working in the comfortable silence they developed over the past months. After Moretti's arrest, everything had changed rapidly. Cross had cut a deal with the FBI, full testimony against every major crime family on the East Coast in exchange for immunity and witness protection. His organization had been dismantled, his assets seized or redistributed. The dangerous, powerful Lucian Cross had effectively ceased to exist. In his place was just Lucian, a man learning to make pancakes, who went to Sienna's prenatal appointments, who'd spent the last 3 months proving he could be the father and partner he'd never planned to become. "I talked to my mother yesterday," Sienna said as they sat down to eat. "She's still not happy about all the secrecy, but she's excited about becoming a grandmother." "When can she visit?" Lucian asked, stabbing at a particularly stubborn pancake. "The marshals said maybe next month," if everything stays quiet. Sienna reached across the table, taking his hand. She'll love you. Once she gets past the whole former crime boss thing. Lucian's laugh was genuine, lighter than it had been 3 months ago. That might take a while. Worth the wait, Sienna said softly. They'd had countless conversations over these months, about his past, about the genetic condition that might affect their baby, about the future they were trying to build from the ashes of their separate lives. It hadn't been easy. There were still nightmares, still moments when Lucian would wake in a cold sweat, checking the locks and security systems. Still times when Sienna would see a black SUV and feel her heart race with remembered terror. But there were also mornings like this. Burned pancakes and gentle teasing. Watching the sunrise together. Feeling the baby kick and seeing wonder in Lucian's eyes every single time. I got the results back, Lucian said suddenly, his tone shifting to something more serious. From the genetic counselor. Sienna's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. They'd done the testing 2 weeks ago, a procedure that could determine if the baby had inherited the heart condition. The waiting had been agonizing. And? She could barely breathe. Lucian's eyes filled with tears, something she'd only seen once before, the day Moretti had been sentenced to life without parole. The baby doesn't have it. Our child is healthy. The relief was so overwhelming Sienna couldn't speak. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, as Lucian came around the table and pulled her into his arms. We're going to be okay, he whispered into her hair. All 3 of us. We're going to be okay. Later that afternoon, they walked along the beach near their home. The Witness Protection Program had given them new identities, Mark and Sarah Chin, and relocated them to a small coastal town in Northern California. It was quiet, anonymous, safe. Everything Sienna's old life had been, but now shared with someone who understood the weight of starting over. Have you thought about names? Lucian asked, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the waves. Actually, yes. Sienna stopped walking, turning to face him. If it's a boy, I was thinking Julian. After your brother. Lucian's breath caught. Sienna. He deserves to be remembered, she said gently. Not for how he died, but for how he lived. You've told me so many stories about him, his laugh, his terrible jokes, how he always saw the best in people. She placed Lucian's hand on her belly. I want our child to carry that legacy. The good parts of your past, not just the parts you're running from. And if it's a girl? Sienna smiled. I was thinking Elena. It means light. After all the darkness we've been through, we could use some light. Lucian pulled her close, and they stood there on the beach as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. In the distance, a family played in the surf, parents chasing a laughing toddler, simple and joyful and normal. That could be them in a few years. That would be them. I love you, Lucian said, the words still new and uncertain on his tongue. He'd said them for the first time only 2 weeks ago, as if he'd been waiting to make sure he had the right to speak them. I love you too, Sienna replied, the words coming easier now. Both versions of you. Marcus and Lucian. The man you were and the man you're becoming. What if I mess this up? The vulnerability in his voice was raw. What if I can't be what you both need? Then we'll figure it out together, Sienna said firmly. That's what families do. They don't give up when things get hard. They fight for each other. As if in agreement, the baby kicked forcefully, making them both laugh. I think someone agrees with you, Lucian said, his hand still pressed against her belly, feeling their child move. They stayed on the beach until the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The future was still uncertain. There would be a trial, more testimony, years of looking over their shoulders. But for the first time since that night in the parking garage, Sienna felt something she hadn't dared to hope for. Peace. The wrong girl had been taken from that parking garage. But somehow, impossibly, it had led to the right ending. Sometimes life's biggest mistakes become its greatest blessings, a truth Sienna would have never believed 3 months ago. Have you ever experienced a moment that seemed like a disaster but turned into something beautiful? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. As they walked back toward their little house on the cliff, Lucian's phone buzzed. He checked it, then smiled. Moretti's appeal was denied. And Vincent and Natasha got married last week. They sent pictures. Your old life, Sienna observed. My old life, Lucian agreed. But not my future. My future is right here. He kissed her as the first stars appeared overhead, and Sienna knew with absolute certainty that despite everything, the kidnapping, the violence, the impossible circumstances, they would be all right. They had found each other in the darkest of places. And together, they would build something bright. 2 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Sienna gave birth to a healthy baby girl. As Lucian held his daughter for the first time, tears streaming down his face, he whispered the name they'd chosen. Welcome to the world, Elena. Your mother and I have been waiting for you. Elena opened her eyes, the same midnight blue as her father's, and wrapped her tiny hand around his finger. In that moment, Lucian Cross finally understood what he'd been fighting for all along. Not power. Not revenge. Not survival. Love. Family. Redemption. The dangerous man who'd ruled an empire was gone. In his place stood a father, a partner, a man who'd been given a second chance he never deserved but would spend the rest of his life honoring. Sienna watched them from the hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, and smiled. She'd been kidnapped by mistake, discovered an impossible truth, survived a war she never asked to fight. And somehow, through all the chaos and terror and uncertainty, she'd found her family. The end.